Hi, I'm Sarah with Lavender Buttons Design, and in this video I'll show you how to make a simple macrame style plant hanger like this one. The materials you'll need for today's project are going to be some kind of string, and take durability into account depending on where you want to hang your planter. I'm going to hang mine inside because I didn't have really super strong string. I'm just using basic twine that you might use in your garden or for cooking. You'll need a pot, and you'll need scissors, and that's it. Your first step is going to be to cut 4 equal lengths of rope, roughly about 5 feet long. If you have a taller ceiling or place that you want to hang this from, you might need slightly longer strings, but the longer they are, the harder they are to kind of manage around your pot. If your pot is larger, you'll also need longer strings. So when in doubt, just go a little longer. Be patient with your knots, and you can always trim it back down later. So I wanted to find the center of all these strings. So I'm gonna kind of line up my ends like so, and then run my finger until I get to the halfway mark. And here, I want to tie a knot. So I'm gonna put my finger in there to hold that spot, and then pull all of the strings through. It's okay if it's not perfectly centered as long as we get close. So that knot there is going to become the base of our planter. So now we can take our strings and separate them out kind of evenly. Until we have them equally spaced. Just like that. Now you're going to want to take your pot and you're going to want to put it on top of that knot as centered as you can. And then we're going to take our strings in groups of 2, you see they're kind of already positioned that way, to start making our knots. Because this pot is really small, I'm only going to do 2 rows of knots. It could get away with 1 row if I wanted to. But if you have a larger pot, you're going to want to do more so it has more structure and stability to that netting. I started my first 2 strings, and I'm gonna try and tie a knot right here at the base where the pot touches the strings. And you're going to double knot everything so that way you have no risk of it coming out. So what I'm doing here is I'm just pulling my first knot to the edge of that pot and then putting this one over. I'm sure that's a little bit hard to see in the video, but there you go. That's your first knot right there at that edge of the pot. So for my next one, I'm gonna do the exact same thing, but in this quarter of the pot. So do your first knot right at that edge. Then you're gonna do a second knot and pull it tight. So now I've got 2 knots for my edges. And of course I picked it up so it all moved away, but you get the idea. I don't recommend when you're doing your own that you pick it up and move it around too much because it might get off balanced for you. Okay. This quadrant, same thing. Start with your first knot, pull it tight, and then do your second knot right on top of it. And then over here, same thing. Okay, first knot. And then second knot for stability. Okay, and now you're going to spread out your strings again because you've got them in new positions. So now you're going to work in different pairs of 2. So I'll show you what that looks like. It kind of made a little flower type shape down here. So my next 2s are going to be grouping these like that. Okay, so I put my pot back on there to hold it in place and to make sure I'm measuring properly. I'm going to take my next two, remember it's one from each of the previous pairings, and I'm going to do the exact same thing where I tie a first knot. With this one, because I don't have the pot to hold the surface of that knot there in place, I'm going to use my one finger. So I'm going to take a finger, I'm going to pull it to the height I want it to be on the pot, which is about halfway up. And then I'm going to do my second knot and try and hold that first knot in place so that it doesn't slip. Okay. So I move on to the next quadrant and we circle our way around. You want to be sure when you do these rows of knots that they all hit roughly the same height as you're going around, otherwise it's going to be unbalanced when it hangs. And you can kind of check it as you go by holding the previous knots up to make sure you are matching that height. Okay, and last one in this set. And you can kind of spread those out flat, see what you're working with, and then I'll show you kind of made another row that boxed out that first one. I pop back there, and now we're going to move on to our third row of knots, and it's the same deal as the second row where you're going to split your pairings again. So I'm going to take one from this set and one from this set, and then they will get tied together. I'm going to tie these right at the top of my pot. Remember to hold that first knot in place while you tie the second knot right on top of it so it is secured. And if we spread that out, you'll see we're kind of making a little netting, almost like a basketball net. So if your pot is bigger than mine, then you just keep doing that until you work your way up and you're happy with the distance. Otherwise, you are pretty much done. So you can put your pairings together like this. And that is what it looks like there. Nice and secure to hold it together. And to finish it off, you'll just, measure your desired length. You're gonna tie a knot at the top where you want it to hang. just like that. You just take all the strings, pull them super tight. I double knot everything just to be safe. Just like that. So now I can pick up my planter by the string here and know that it's going to be secure. If you want to do a tassel on the bottom, like my example, here's what you do. So this is for the tassel at the bottom. You're going to want quite a bit of string, just depending on how dense you want it to be. So if you happen to have something that's the length you want it to be, I'm just going to show you with this ruler because I think that's a good 6 inches is a good length. I'm going to hold the first part there, and then I'm just going to wrap around. You could do this on your hand if you want to. You could just eyeball it. It is not an exact science. Just wrap, 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 wrap. If you're using thicker rope for this project, obviously you won't need quite as much to get the same effect. I'd still recommend going with 4 long initial strings just because of balance and making sure that what you're doing is secure. So now that I've got that entirety of that string wrapped around this ruler here, I'm going to just slide it off. Like that. I'm going to cut one of the ends here. Come back to my plant netting here. And then you want to find that center knot where you started out. And you're going to want to carefully put your tassel strings through that space. So this thick knot here is where my original bottom was. And remember, we made 4 quadrants around it. So you're going to want to make sure for balance that you've got 2 on each side, which you'll know based on how many strings you have. So I've got 4 here and I've got 4 here. So I know that is balanced. So this will be my bottom tassel. I'm going to take another piece of string, maybe about, I don't know, 2 feet long. And I'm going to just wrap it. I'm going to start with a knot, of course, at the top here with one end. Make that really tight. And then I'm going to take the rest of my string, tuck that little guy down so I go over it. And I'm just going to wrap it. When you get to the end, just pull up a couple pieces of what you've wrapped, like that, okay? Just enough so you can get this end through them. And then you pull that tight, and that will become its own knot. And down here, you'll see not all of my ends are even, so I'm just gonna take my scissors and get those trimmed up. And here's our end result. It looks so great. If you get yours all done and you feel like it's kind of lopsided or leaning, what you can do is just kind of finagle these top strings until you get it balanced, and then just tie a new knot at the top. So what's really great about this project is you can totally customize it however you want. You can use different colored strings, you can use thicker strings, you could add extra embellishments or tassels wherever you want. You could even put beads, you know, along it to make it really fit whatever your style is. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to social media so that way you always know when I have new videos out.